Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah LaBelle. I'm the production manager here at Eckerson Group, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on security log analytics. We're thrilled that you're able to join us for this event. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce today's speakers. We will be hearing from Kevin Petrie, our Vice President of Research here at Eckerson Group. And Kevin is an industry analyst, writer, instructor, marketer, and services leader. He launched, built, and led a profitable data services team for EMC Pivotal and ran field training at the data integration software provider Attunity, which is now part of Click. A frequent public speaker and co-author of 2 books on data streaming, Kevin is also a data management instructor at eLearning Curve. And we are also going to be hearing from Thomas Hazel, the CTO and founder of Chaos Search. He is a serial entrepreneur at the forefront of communication, virtualization, and database technology, and he is the inventor of Chaos Search's patented IP. Thomas has also patented other technologies in the areas of distributed algorithms, virtualization, and database science. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science from the University of New Hampshire, is a Hall of Fame alumni inductee, and founded both student and professional chapters of the Association for Computing Machinery. And a little bit about Eckerson Group. We are a research and consulting firm that specializes in data analytics. Hopefully you've read some of our articles and reports, and we also excel in consulting. And before Kevin and Thomas kick it off, a little housekeeping. If you have questions or comments, please use the Q&A button and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. And you can use the chat if you have a problem or a question for the administrator, which is me. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. So folks, really pleased to have the opportunity to speak with you today about a security story, but it's really a chapter in a larger data story. What we're going to talk about is security log analytics. And I think you'll see as we go through the challenges, the use cases, a new architectural approach to handle that, you'll see that this can apply to a lot of other use cases related to log analytics for IT ops, for DevOps, for cloud ops, and also more broadly for SQL workloads. And Thomas will talk about that some specific to Chaos Search's approach. But to kick things off here, well, let's just look at some of the mega trends that are happening in our space. The ink was not even dry on these slides before we heard about a new security attack related to our energy pipeline system. So I think that we're all living in an increasingly visceral way the fact that this is a very highly digitized, highly exposed world. Because we're digitally transforming our businesses sort of in a hyperdrive mode in the wake of the COVID shock, because more and more decision makers within organizations need to put their hands on data and use it to make decisions, and because hackers are getting very creative and increasingly smart, you've got more and more cyber attacks. And that's an increasingly higher risk to organizations and to individuals. So I've highlighted a few headlines here that are potentially less shocking each year because it kind of ups the stakes. But there was a Twitter hack on Joe Biden, on a number of other individuals, Elon Musk. There was a cyber attack that shut down the New Zealand Stock Exchange. And we've still got this Russian attack that on our nation's infrastructure that continues to have question marks in terms of what's still lurking there. So we can build this out. What you'll see here is that organizations are getting increasingly susceptible to bad guys that are looking at new ways to steal money, gain celebrity, and steal secrets. And unfortunately, they're in some cases gaining an upper hand, but there is hope for us. So if we go to the next slide, security log analytics can sharpen your surveillance. And so what are logs? Logs are, in this case, security related events, user logins, password changes, firewall alerts, all these various individual events that relate to a security infrastructure. They throw off a lot of data in the form of logs. There are also messages that between different IT components, maybe it's a firewall, maybe it's an intrusion detection device, maybe it's just a server, all these different security tools and aspects of your infrastructure are sending messages to one another. So the events and the messages are captured in logs, and that creates an enormous haystack but there are ways to look through there and find the needles that really help you sharpen your surveillance. What this can do is help security operations teams if they can ingest, transform, index that data. Critical piece we'll be talking more about, and then search and query those logs. They can get ahead of threats. They can predict, they can prevent, shut down risks, they can mitigate things that are already happening, and document this to reduce risk and improve compliance. So opportunity here is to reduce the risk to your enterprise in terms of reducing operational disruptions, financial losses, and satisfying compliance concerns. They might be related to personally identifiable information, say GDPR in the European Union, the CCPA in California, and similar legislation that's cropping up in the United States. There are a lot of different ways in which regulators are getting more aggressive to have organizations demonstrate they're using proper vigilance with customers' data. So the opportunity is really to improve customer trust, improve customer retention, and obviously improve your revenue picture.
And data is near dear to my heart. So data and security and the security detection is a key aspect to what we bring. So looking forward to having this conversation.
Fantastic. And so Thomas, I kind of view this as signal intelligence, if you use a military metaphor, in the war against cyber criminals. And as we said, it's a much bigger data story as well.
Absolutely.
And so with security log analytics, given what I've just said, most of you are probably saying, okay, how's this compare to SIM, to security and information event management? And the answer is there's a fair amount of overlap, but there are some important distinctions as well. You're analyzing security logs. You're also, in the case of security log analytics, if you do it well, you can have very cost-effective throughput in terms of the volume of logs that you're processing, that you're analyzing, and the volume of logs that you can retain. And that's something that we're going to drill into more. Security log analytics, it's more basic. It's easier to understand in terms of training. So you can have folks who aren't necessarily rocket scientists when it comes to security, starting to address security log analytics, starting to reduce certain risks like DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks, or even share some of the responsibilities with IT ops or DevOps engineers. Now, some things that SIM does that security log analytics does not do. They'll analyze a broader set of data, including network flows, IoT sensor data that might not be coming in logs necessarily. They can assess vulnerabilities, and they can generate more specific compliance reports to satisfy specific regulatory requirements. And in a lot of cases, orchestrate a more robust, comprehensive security response. But the advantages of security log analytics in terms of scale, ease of use, and agility, flexibility, can be compelling for certain organizations. And we can build out this slide. It's really helping the enterprises that have tight budgets. If you have limited staff and somewhat basic security requirements, you can get a lot of what you need to get done with security log analytics versus SIM.
Yeah, I really like this separation. You know, there are two aspects to this. If you know what you know, SIM is a great offering, but a lot of the unknowns where if you're not storing the data, if you're not making it available for the analysis, and there's new things coming up all the time, new devices, new services, things that a SIM provider may not know. I think this combination you actually need in your organization. And we'll talk to why that's important as we go through this presentation.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. The unknown, the things you don't know, the unknown, that becomes really important because you don't want to leave data clues behind. Okay, so what are we specifically talking about in terms of attack vectors? There's the distributed denial of service attack, which is a tried and tested method of wreaking havoc. And you got a lot of smart folks that look to overwhelm a website, as an example, with traffic. The defense is that you spot that pattern early, you shut down the ports, you shut down the points of entry. There's malware, and this can include a whole bucket of things: virus, spyware, Trojan horses, all kinds of worms. And here you need to identify and investigate those disruptions and outages. So you might well have something that comes in looking very innocuous and quickly wreaks havoc. And it's hard to identify and get ahead of those things. Another bucket of vector attack here is unauthorized activities. If you can trick an insider or become an insider you can start to gain keys to the kingdom. And we all know this. We know it through social engineering, people making calls and asking for passwords in very innocuous ways. My son had an interesting conversation. He's 14 years old. He Googled Apple's customer service number and ended up reaching someone on the other side of the world who was trying to convince him to go stand in the parking lot of a nearby drugstore so they could get the better Wi-Fi signal there. So there are a lot of different ways in which things can infiltrate networks and gain improper access. Advanced persistent threats. This is the stuff that's kind of unnerving. The other activities, you're going to see you have a problem pretty quickly. But if we look at what happened with the Russian attack on our government infrastructure, that was there for quite a while in sort of sleeper cells, I think 9 months. And this is where you kind of sneak in, you spy, and you steal inside the network over time. The defense there means monitoring and investigating events to find anomalies. And this really gets to, Thomas, what you're saying about those unknowns. What are the unknowns and how can you get proactive about looking for those extra needles in the haystack?
Absolutely. These four scenarios, if you will, use cases, this is where security log analytics really does shine because it's different. It's nuanced. It's the unknown unknowns where a service that allows you to store everything. Because think about it. You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't have access to this data, you're never going to know. And so the ability to hunt and look and meander through all these different log streams that you create allows you to say, this is why denial of service attack is happening. Here's what we need to turn off, or here's what we need to address. Malware, unauthorized. I mean, all of it requires this ability to search and arbitrarily search, look around the corner and saying, this is something that seems problematic. But the key thing is having access to all the data, because as you mentioned, Kevin, it could happen 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 months in the past. And if you don't know what you don't know, you're never going to know it if you don't have access to this data.
Absolutely. So the idea here is to make sense of those events and messages so that you can get smart and make timely responses. Timing is everything when it comes to this. So, okay, so how can the SecOps teams strike back? The challenges we've kind of talked about, I'll flesh them out here, the lack of scale. So log systems throw off a ton of data, a ton of logs, and you need to figure out ways to cost effectively store it, but then I'll cost effectively process it and make sense of it. And so that's where a new architectural approach, really getting to more low footprint indexing methods can help. And we'll talk more about that. So the goal here, the requirement from a tool perspective, also a people and a process perspective, is to integrate high log volumes from a lot of different sources. And with higher throughput and retention, lower cost, make sense of them. Changing threats. We talked about how bad guys get creative quickly. And so you need to analyze real-time and historical data, compare it to patterns that are known in the past, and then easily reconfigure your defenses. The manual processes can be a challenge because, as with any other aspect of IT, you have folks that are often very skilled at coding and some prefer it, but in a lot of cases it slows you down. So automating the configuration and the monitoring, getting more intuitive views into what you're doing through familiar tools like Kibana can very much be an advantage.
Yeah,
it can help you minimize training and setup as well.
Yeah, I love these challenges. So often that I hear is this lack of ability to scale your infrastructure is a choice that maybe I won't store this data. Maybe I won't make it online. And then when you're in this denial of service attack or this malicious thing is happening, to try to stand it up then is the worst time to try to build out your infrastructure. And so, when you get to this scale, when new devices come on, when new streams come on, that inability to put it into an analytical system, a logging system for your security needs is really one of the main detractors of doing a well-designed system. And I think if you can have scale that is automated, that is seamless, so whether it's a new workload, a new stream, or your scale is increasing from, let's say, 1 terabyte per day to 10 in the next day, if you can address that, you're really putting your company at risk. And to your point, the changing threats, I mean, every day it's going to be different, right? If you know what you know, well, then you don't really have a problem. You can have alerting and monitoring set up. But the idea that your platform, your analytical solution, particularly log analytics, is once you find the problem, you want to be alerted of a future problem. And so the ability to find and then alert in the future is really the 1-2 punch. And the manual process, anytime you do something manual, you're at risk because time is of now, right? Is that your business, your company, your customers are all waiting on you to resolve the problem ASAP. And if you're standing something up or you don't have the tooling to investigate, to address, to, if you will, solve the problem at hand, you're really putting your corporation and your business at risk.
So, okay, so use cases here. Thomas, to build on what you're describing, so to strike back, it really, we see 4 use cases, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. The first one is to hunt, and that's getting at the unknown unknowns. What are you missing and what could be a threat? That's an iterative process. It's very hard to do, and you need some real experts to do it. There's also investigating. So something bad happened, and that's what's happening with the US government now. I think the State Department, in terms of the Russian infiltration, going back and picking up the debris, figuring out what happened and trying to shut down future vulnerabilities. There's the monitoring and alerting, which will look at on a real-time basis, what are the anomalies that you can spot, the patterns and the breaks in the patterns that signal something is awry, because you want to flag it so that vigilant human beings can look at it, potentially shut down things preemptively. But that monitoring alerting is critical. And then there's reporting, which is a little more retroactive and helping satisfy internal, external auditors, regulators that you're showing the right vigilance. Could well be your board of directors. If you've got a major PII breach, you want to make sure that you're showing real vigilance going forward. And that's where reporting can be critical. But all this depends on a whole lot of data. And those logs can be a pretty rich mine of intelligence for you.
I love these bullets, these use cases, because this is the scenario: the hunt, investigate, monitor, alerting, and reporting. That's the flow. Now, what we don't have here is all the pain if you didn't set it up correctly, where the scale or you're not having access to this data. But this is the perfect flow: is the ability to quickly hunt or search across all those scenarios, because again, it's a new something that's happening, and how can you quickly look around the corner to find out what it is. And that investigation, and skilled investigators on your company IT department are crucial. But once you find that problem, you don't want it to happen again, or at least you want to be alerted. And so the ability to say, what I found, this investigation, I want to create a trigger so I can see it again. And this is so crucial in your security analytical platform. And then lastly, a report, a monitor, a dashboard, so that you can constantly monitor all the things that are going on in your system for the things you found out. So the key thing is the ability to find out the unknowns and then add it through your system so that you can trigger on it and respond to it and visualize it quickly. So this is a great flow. Again, the one missing piece is the pain if you didn't do your IT infrastructure correctly.
Yeah, so this is the vision. And so we'll get now to the reality of making sense of the mess and avoiding a big mess. So, this boils down to mechanics of a data pipeline, and you could have this apply to IT log analytics, cloud log analytics, DevOps use cases. And the sources change, and on the right side, the type of analytics change. But the fundamental architecture in the pipeline is that you need to ingest a whole lot of structured and semi-structured data. You need to transform it, normalize it, put it into something that's usable and consumable, and then index. So start to create views and a way of organizing the data so that you can, when you store it, have it in a readily searchable and analyzable, if that's a term, format. You need those pointers, you need the index to help you navigate through the mountain of logs that's involved here. So there's the analysis piece, which is going to get to monitoring and alerting, hunting threats, investigating, supporting, reporting on a more periodic basis, and presenting all that through a lot of familiar visualization tools. It might be Kibana, it might be Power BI, it could be a lot of different tools, whatever folks are most comfortable with. But this is the flow to picture as you try to figure out, okay, how do I really do this at scale?
Yeah, this is the perfect flow you'd hope would exist, but there's a real problem, right, where that flow has real challenges I'm sure our listeners have dealt with also well.
Yes, exactly. And so the pink is the pain. There's an overload, and we all know that the logs pile up very quickly, and that creates a lot of challenge. you need to transform it. So the comparison here is the ELK stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana, which, as we know, is addressing a lot of those use cases for log analytics in a lot of enterprises and mid-sized organizations. It's based on Elasticsearch, working back, and then Logstash and Kibana as well. But there's the ingestion of the event and message logs. Logstash is going to help there. Then you need to transform and index it. The index within the ELK stack is based on a Lucene database, which can be tricky because you can have that index get inflated very quickly. When you have source schema changes, you can have things quickly go awry in terms of the processing overhead that's required because of the way in which the Lucene index works. And that has a cascading effect so that when you start to run Elasticsearch queries and searches on the data that you've stored and indexed with Lucene, you can have a lot of bottlenecks. And that's what's starting to force these no-win decisions that we described earlier, where you can retain some of your data, but not all of it, because you don't think you'll have the throughput to really analyze it. And Thomas, would love your viewpoint on this, because I know this is in a lot of ways
this is
why
near and dear to my heart. So, I mean, the visualization and Elasticsearch as an API and functionality is wonderful. You know, this ability to search all these different data sources are great. The problem was the Elasticsearch database was a search database, not really geared towards the scale of logs that it's now dealing with. Now, we understand why the community adopted the ELK stack or the Elastic stack because of this power of this searching, this hunting, and to ultimately alerting and reporting. The problem is the underneath problem, the Lucene index technology, where at scale, it's really problematic and really costly. If you index data in Lucene, it could be 2, 3, 4x the raw size, unlike, you know, compression algorithms or other type of database indexes. That power of the search comes with a real cost. And, you know, if let's say your data is changing, the re-indexing of data is a real problematic issue with respects to this stack. Now, I'm a big fan of the Elasticsearch API and visualization controls. It's just the pain that I think probably our callers are knowing about, that when you get into the terabytes, the petabytes, billions of trillions, you know, this functionality doesn't look so good.
So let's talk about a new approach. And if you can start to streamline what you're doing, if you can create a new index, you can create a large physical index, and then you can store it. And now you can start to create these virtual index views and transform that in order to support much more efficient search and query workloads. And so the idea is that if you can index in a highly compressed way and do it in a very versatile way, you can much more easily process a higher volume of logs, and you can support all these different use cases, both in terms of real-time throughput and in terms of the ability to go back retroactively and look at a lot of different logs. And so, Thomas, this is a good teeing off point for you in terms of the approach that Chaos Search has. We've identified the problem, kind of drilled down on one key bottleneck, the index. And so talk about what you're doing there.
Yeah. So the inputs are your data. The outputs are the value that you're trying to achieve. The middle ground is the pain. And one thing that is very painful is scaling the storage. You know, classic ELK stack architecture requires, you know, physically provisioning your cluster where you have attached compute and storage. Just that alone can be quite painful. And this index technology adds to that pain, where scaling those indices and re-indexing those indices on that storage is real problematic. And so this is where I like to introduce Chaos Search as a solution to this scale and time to results, cost type problem that you would typically see in the Elastic Stack type offering. And so, you know, without further ado, I like to say Chaos Search enables our customers to know better while still achieving the promise of the data lake economics, that ease of use, store data easily, simply, elastically, securely, redundantly, but then from there, have the ability to transform that cloud object storage that the customer owns into a highly scalable analytical log database that you can do all these workloads that we just talked about, that Elasticsearch would talk about, but not do it in the same type of complexity and cost. And let's just be honest, when it fails over, it fails hard. Address these problems and come up with a solution that, you know, customers get to achieve their goals, fix the bad guys from breaking into your corporation. So I like to say that we're the next generation of log analytics, security analytics offering, where moving to the cloud was kind of like the first generation. But what we've done is reimagined the index technology that Kevin and I have been talking about is problematic, particularly in the Lucene index technology. So with our solution, the customer simply stores all their log data into one centralized offering, whether it's an Amazon, GCP, we're going to come out with Azure in 2022. But the idea is that all these devices, all these services, it's really problematic to store this data to be analyzed and then building out the scaffolding. So I like to say, if you want to have a good architecture, start streaming them to your cloud data lake. Now, there's so much wonderful tooling to get that data in there. It's a great way to provide data governance, security, role-based access control, all that procedures. Now, where Chaos Search comes in is we're a SaaS offering. You provide read-only access to this data lake that you've created, and we'll start providing analytical capabilities from that lake. So you provide the storage, you provide read-only access, and a location for us to index this data into your account. This requires no data movement, no transformation, no DBAs, no data engineering to build out this scaffolding. We do that for you, and we publish well-known analytical APIs like Elasticsearch. Now we have no Elasticsearch under the hood or Lucene, but we have all the controls, the APIs, the visualization like Kibana. And we also are coming out this summer into the fall, a SQL API on the exact same index representation. So maybe there's times where you want to do the hunting in Elasticsearch, maybe reporting in Kibana, but maybe porting in some other visualization tool like Looker, Tableau, Metabase. And with our data platform, you now can simply store your data into this lake and provide analytical access within your organization. Again, simply, easy, and cost effectively. The idea behind Chaos Search is that we're really a data platform that has a lot of database capabilities. So as you can see here, you have your storage vendors like Amazon, Google, Azure, and then our index technology that is addressing a lot of this pain is stored in your account. And from there, our service, our data fabric, elastically scales so that if data ingestion is coming up, increasing to a point of terabytes, 10 terabytes, we scale up. Or if you're querying, maybe it's a large aggregation over 100 terabytes, we can spin that up. But the key thing is our data fabric provides data management, this data refinery, which is really a game changer where you don't have to worry about transforming your data before you index it. You actually can transform it virtually afterwards so that if you have a petabyte of data that you want to maybe change a URL into different attributes, you can do that dynamically through our data refinery. And all of it is role-based access control. These data refineries allow you to provide views of access. Maybe the Salesforce team wants to see the data this way. Maybe the market team wants to see it that way. But above that data fabric, it's the same APIs, it's the same tooling, it's the same use cases that just not the time, cost, and complexity that typically you would be associated with this type of use case, this type of scale. And why is that important? Get all your data into Lake so that when you have a problem, when you have a security risk, you can go back in time, analyze it, set up the reporting and alerting that you would do, say, in Elastic Stack. And again, you now can do all that in a cost-effective, simple way. Love to get your thoughts, Kevin, on this architecture diagram that I've put up here.
Yeah, great stuff. So I think that as folks can see here, and as we've been talking about, the architectural challenges are pretty broad. We're talking about security here, but it goes much deeper. And I think that the move to the cloud, we've just seen a lot of enterprises getting more constructive and deliberate as they rethink, okay, now that I'm moving to the cloud and I'm really committing to that, what does that mean in terms of the way I can analyze my data at scale? And so what I like about the approach that you're talking about here is you start to consolidate a number of different personas, a number of different use cases and workloads on a common shared architecture. And I think that it's an incremental approach in terms of what enterprises do, but this is an interesting time of change. Facebook does not have a data warehouse. They use Presto. So there are a lot of different ways in which organizations are starting to rethink traditional approaches and try to remove some of that bloat related to data warehouse structures in particular.
Yeah, no, I love it. And, why does this matter to security analytics, right? Is that a warehouse, you have to think about what the problem is ahead of time, organize your data and put it into the warehouse. The key value of this data lake is start sending the data now. Before you think about anything else, a device comes up, send it. Because with a data lake philosophy, you can index it in the past, you can index it real time, live. The key thing with a chaos search type offering is that when a new service or a new device or a new anything comes online, start streaming the data. Don't worry about anything other than get into your data lake from a starting point. From there, now you get this unique ability to say, okay, I've been sending this data for the last week. Connect chaos search, index that data. Maybe you have some new data coming in. We'll automatically index that data that's changed so that you can focus on not just the collecting of the data, which is again the key aspect of the data lake, but the idea that from there, all your sources, that hunting, that ability to say, okay, something's going on. Maybe I want to wildcard search this and that and that. Maybe I want to do some visualizations like, hey, something's trending about failed logins. Why is that happening? Maybe there's something going on. Maybe I want to dive in deeper. And the idea that using well-known APIs and tooling is key so that your internal IT department knows how to use this. But the idea that store everything forever because it's cost effective, connect a service like chaos search into it so that now, whether it's the hunting or the alerting, where maybe you know what you know and you want to set up alerts on different data sources so that maybe you want to get pager duty. Hey, somebody's trying to break in N number of times. Maybe I want to take a look at this. And then the dashboards, the ability to create one view or multiple views that you may want to analyze. Now, what the unique thing about our chaos search offering is that you can have N number of views in our data refinery to create different hunting techniques or different visualizations. So it's not just, index it and then now you're statically configured. No, with the chaos search solution, the data refinery allows you to create all different lenses for the hunting, the alerting, and the reporting, ultimately to solve any risk issues that you may have in the field or over time. And then, I have to say it, we provide a lot of power, but at a very cost-effective approach. And so I think, this is all great, but if it doesn't, cost you too much, you take a look at it. We don't break the bank, and our cost per gigabyte is really best in class in the market. And if you try to do this with the Elk Stack or any other competitor, we're really best in class because of this data lake philosophy, our unique architecture and index. And so the key thing to take away is unlimited retention. When you index this data, you can store it for a month, a year. We don't charge you more for that. And having all this API access, whether it's Elasticsearch, SQL, and coming out with ML as well. And we're SOC 2 compliant, we're HIPAA compliant, and it's a fully managed service with the same controls and visualizations that you know and love. I know you, Kevin, but if you can get all your data the way you want it at a cost-effective price, I think that's a pretty good deal.
Definitely. And one of the key points of pain we see with enterprises and mid-sized organizations is pain and surprise at the cost of cloud compute. And so a lot of what you're talking about here is reducing cloud compute workloads because you're making use of those compute cycles more efficiently. And so that can help alleviate some of the pain and some of the planning challenges that organizations have to forecast that cost.
Yeah, no, and I love it. And the key thing is this cost is why people don't store data, right? Is that if you think it's going to be too cost prohibitive, you may shrink that retention window, right? So maybe you get those real-time alerts of what you know about. You're not going to be able to debug what you don't know about and then ultimately protect yourself in the future.
Fantastic. So Thomas, should I take this one first?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, great. Great discussion. So we work with a lot of organizations, both on the research side, which I run, and the consulting side as well. And the goal is always to reconcile, okay, here's the vision with reality. Usually reality can be messy. And I think that 3 guiding principles about how to move forward can be helpful. The first thing I'll say is that I'm betting most people on the call already have something in place to analyze security log analytics. In all likelihood, it's some form of SIM. Maybe you're doing Elk Stack. And I think the key thing would be look for incremental approaches. I'll get into that more. But the key thing is we're talking about here architecting for scale. So you have some methods today. You've probably made some trade-off decisions about how much to retain. looking ahead to the rest of 2021 and to 2022, you want to architect for scale. You want to identify log jams today, pun intended, or in the future in terms of your indexing and your transformation workloads in particular. That's a likely area that you're going to see bottlenecks crop up. And then you want to start to evaluate tools that can alleviate the bottleneck. Going with a commercial tool can make a lot of sense. It's automated. It reduces a lot of the manual scripting and maintenance. If you're evaluating security log analytics or some tools, you want to look at throughput, retention, and cost in terms of evaluation criteria. The idea of consolidating can make a lot of sense. Mid-sized organizations are understaffed. I think IT organizations of all sizes are understaffed because there's so much to do and so much data to analyze. If you can address your SecOps use cases and also your IT ops and DevOps, and maybe those teams can help each other with something intuitive and high scale, all the better. So look for those opportunities to consolidate workloads and identify and support, common sources, common infrastructure, and common processing needs. Third key point, which I started with, is changing incrementally. Identify bottlenecks now. Where is there pain now? Don't rush to rip and replace everything, but maybe if you've got SIM in place and you just don't have the budget to scale it, think about putting in something, a low footprint indexing solution to complement, and that can help to surgically fix a bottleneck that's appearing now, pain that's appearing now. You can win some internal support for future budget to expand that, but you can also free up some dollars from a SIM maintenance or upgrade picture that can be prohibitive. And the final point about incrementally changing is that, yes, it's a tool story, but it's also a people and process story. So helping redelegate tasks rather than rewriting team charters, I think, is critical. People need to perceive an incremental change and then an incremental sign of progress before they make more extensive changes. Thomas, would love your thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, I couldn't say it any better. I mean, the key thing is those key 3 points is that if you're scaling and then redoing your architecture, that's a problem. If you're consolidating and re-architecting, that's a problem. And incremental change, if it requires re-architecting, that's a real problem. And so because of that, coming up with a philosophy and a solution that can scale naturally, that can consolidate all these different workloads and can grow with you is so key into making any architectural platform choice. And so, these are problems that are near dear to our heart here at Chaos Search. And what we ran, full force into is to address these type of issues where, a one-off side, elk stack is fine, but as a solution, you may have hundreds of them within your organization, and that could be a nightmare. So having this one unified solution makes a lot of sense, and do it incrementally. Right? Try one workload, make sure your architecture, your platform achieves a goal, add another and add another. And again, I want to add in that data lake philosophy. If you can buy into it and get the right solution around it, it's a winning combination.
And it's great stuff. And broadly speaking, one of the key areas of coverage that I have at Eckerson Group is the rise of the cloud data platform. And the idea is you've got the best of the cloud data lake, the best of the data lake that emerged over a decade ago, really boils down to highly elastic economic storage. And now it's found its home in terms of cloud native object storage. Then you start to put SQL-like structures on top of that, very lightweight structures on top to perform the analytics you need. That overall concept is applying to all kinds of cloud native data platforms now. And I think this is a great case in point.
No, I'll add one more note. I mean, being a data lake offering doesn't mean you don't lose out on database functionality. You actually can have both together. It's just that if you start with a data lake philosophy, again, you're solving the scale, cost, complexity issue with your storage. Doesn't mean you lose out on any of the database functionality, whether it's for log analytics, BI analytics, or machine learning analysis for, say, predictive analysis.
Very cool. So Sarah, do we have some questions here?
Yes, it looks like we have a few that came in while you were chatting. And if anyone has other questions, feel free to use that Q&A button. So our first question is asking about the ability to integrate physical security logs with cybersecurity logs to give better insight into what is happening in a cyber physical system, such as a metro network or power transmission network.
I'll take that. So
Great.
if you're using the chaos search solution, that's really why we built this system, is that if you stream those logs into your data lake and use chaos service, our data refinery allows you to take any one of those streams and create a logical view together to do any type of analysis. So it's like one large view that, say, via Kibana or Elastic API. So bringing those data sources together, maybe doing some transformation. We're coming out this summer with the ability to join across different data sources. Currently, we support just the bringing the data sources together in one view. But that is such a natural act, and that's why we want to sell this data lake streaming viewpoint, where stream these in, go to the refinery and bring them together to do analysis is a key point. And again, we're bringing out joins across those data streams coming this summer into the fall.
Thomas, I think you've handled that well. I'll let you cover that one. That's great.
And there's, I believe, a related question asking about the ability to support cyber intelligence and digital forensics.
So I think where we're going to live in that is we're going to integrate, because we have well-known standard APIs into those toolings. Now, with that said, we do provide all that powerful hunting. We will be coming out with machine learning analysis on our platform. But the next level up, we're looking to partner with companies that really go a little bit deeper into detecting that in an automated way. But again, what we've done is publish the well-known APIs that they probably already have integrated with, because they're using Elasticsearch in the background or a SQL database in the background. And so we'll be coming out with partnerships this coming year.
Wonderful. And we have a question. It's a bit long, but it's a detailed question about sensitive information and confidential computing, asking, why should an organization use cloud-hosted capabilities to analyze sensitive information, such as security logs, given that until now, it is unclear how much public cloud platforms can safeguard security and confidentiality of the data of end-user organizations, since the concept of confidential computing is still in the innovation trigger stage?
Actually, that's a good question. I'll take it. We're helping a company, big financial company that was private, had a huge public security break-in, and they're going to the cloud because of doing security so well. Now, the key thing is, do you have good controls procedures around this? There's Fed type offerings that these cloud providers have. There's some outpost technologies that Amazon has, but I would argue that the world is going cloudy, not saying that you don't want to keep it on-prem, but I'm seeing that a lot of these big organizations that security is financial, health, they're going to the cloud because of the challenges of all this security risk assessment. Now, with that said, you still have to have good controls and procedures. Now, with our solution, we don't want to own the customer's data. That's one big aspect. So we connect to your S3 storage or Google Cloud. We also have an offering that we install our service within your own virtual private cloud, where we don't even own the compute. You own the storage and the compute. So there's a variety of ways, but going to the cloud, I got to be real honest, it's happening. I mean, we talked to Gartner analysts. Some companies have been kicking and screaming. Some companies have had security issues and then run to the cloud because they realized those security issues were really a limitation of what their cloud on-prem offering could achieve.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that the move to the cloud is quite broad. And while there might be very specific requirements in certain sectors related to regulations that would make it complicated, there is a broad acceptance, and I think well justified, that the cloud has appropriate security controls. And in this case that we're talking about here, the benefits of the cloud elasticity, of the processing efficiency of this kind of platform, the security benefits of that, I think, would outweigh any exposure concerns, because on-prem systems are certainly susceptible. And I think folks like Amazon have spent a lot of time on security considerations.
Yeah, they really do. And the Fed cloud that Amazon provides and Google has the equivalent, the federal CIA government, they all have special access points that, get that next level security. So they're really driving hard around security, as we all are. And these big organizations that used to do it on-prem are now looking to cloud providers to help do it better.
Excellent. Sarah, are there other questions?
I don't have any more in the queue, but if anyone has other questions, I'll wait for a minute or two if you want to type some in.
Well,
Sounds
Kevin,
good.
I enjoyed the conversation. This
Likewise.
is obviously a topic near and dear, data access, data security, business intelligence. I love log data because it gets really, really big. And one of the biggest challenges that we address is this is scale, new use cases all the time, new streams all the time. So to me, not saying that I want companies to have security risks, but providing access to their data so they can resolve those security risks, again, is a topic I love talking about.
Yeah, this has been great. Great discussion. Really pleased to learn more and share more about the approach that you're championing here. And couldn't agree more that there are some real bottlenecks that emerge when it comes to log analytics and other types of analytics, and more creative approaches that are based on the cloud that drill in on that indexing problem. It's all the better. Enterprises have a lot of options to consider.
Great.
Very good. Okay, Sarah, we'll hand over to you.
Well, I'm not seeing any further questions, so I think we will wrap it up a little bit early. So
Okay.
give you 10 minutes back in your afternoon, and we hope that we see you next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks,
Educational
Kevin.
as always.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Thank you, Sarah.